So first things first is to set up a folder structure. You can see here on my second hard drive I have a folder called my engine. I'm going to put project files in there. We will have several projects and have to refactor and move code around as time goes on and as we understand more things about the engine. For now I'm going to put all my projects as a subfolder into this project folder here. I'm also using SVN. What version control you wish to use is a religious debate. If you don't know what version control is, that's fine. You'll see SVN as I go. But basically, it's the best way I can describe version control. It's like save game. If you're used to, like a lot of times I played Wolfenstein growing up, and I would hit F8 like almost every 5 seconds, just save my progress, save my progress, save my health at 100%. And then eventually I'd do something stupid, walk into a room where there's no way I could survive. I'd hit F8 and save, and then I would immediately die. Well, that's a problem because now I have to play the entire game over, because if I reload my autosave, I'm going to immediately die. I've just put myself in a bad state and I can't get out of it. So if you're smart, or smarter than I was, you'd go out to the menu and save a different level. And I noticed in StarCraft it does autosave and it saves the files incrementally. That's nice. Okay, now you have this kind of history of files you can use. And if you walk into the room or a situation where you cannot survive, you can go back a few files and you're good. Well, that's one of the benefits of source control is we do these check-ins or save games, and if we get down a path that we really shouldn't have gone down, we can rewind back a few versions. There's also a lot of benefits to version control that you'll see as we go through the videos. I'm not going to do a whole sequence of videos on version control because if you are anxious and ambitious and you follow the entire playlist, you will see how I use Subversion as a tool. Even though I'm not making this engine with other developers, which is one of the main reasons to have source control, is to share code with all developers. There's definitely good reasons to have source control just by yourself, and you'll see those advantages as we go along here. Okay, anyway, so there's my soapbox, and we're 2 minutes into the first video. I should probably do something. I'm going to open Visual Studio. I am using Visual Studio 2010. I have nothing open yet. I haven't even created a project. So let's go through the first step of creating the project. Most of our code will be in C++. The first project I'm going to build is our engine project, which is hopefully going to be able to be reused through several other projects. Some of these projects will be toys, some of these projects will be game, but the core of all core projects will be the engine project. So let's do it. File, new, project. I am going to browse to, jump to this project files folder, select that folder, and I'm going to keep this simple. I'm going to call it engine. Win32 console applications, C++, yes. I think that's all I want. Click OK. It goes to this wizard. I'm going to say console app. I'm not going to use precompiled headers. We may later. That's a build. Compile time optimization. I'll explain if we get to it. Finish. The first thing I see is underscore T main standard or stdafx.h, Control Alt L, open the Solution Explorer, look at what Visual Studio created for me from its project template. Bunch of external dependencies, we can't modify those. But however, Visual Studio likes to separate the files into header files and source files. I don't like this structure. I also don't like all the stuff that it adds. I don't mind using Visual Studio generated code as long as I understand what it's doing and it's not getting in my way. From the get-go as a beginner, I think a lot of this is a waste. Let's just tear this out. I'm going to click these things, delete. I don't want to remove them, I want to delete them. Remove them will simply mark them as dead to the project, but the files will still be there on my hard drive. I don't want them on my hard drive. I'm going to hit delete. This stdafx, that's this include kind of thing. I'm going to, well, it's the CPP file for that include, but I just fried that file anyway. So let's delete that. README, delete that. I'm going to bring engine CPP up here to the root. And I'm actually going to hit F2 there and call this main.cpp. And then get rid of these. These are not actual folders on my hard drive. These are virtual folders that Visual Studio tracks for us via the project. They're only folders as far as the project considers them to be folders, but they're not actual folders on my hard drive. And so you can get confused between these. They're called filter folders versus what are actual real folders. We'll use them eventually. For now, I'm just going to delete these because I'm going to create my own. I got this main CPP, got a lot of stuff Visual Studio generates for me. Just keep it simple. Control A delete, void main, paren, curlies. I get the red squiggly because IntelliSense isn't really used to what I'm trying to do here. But the compiler will be happy. Control-Shift-B to build. Look down in the lower left corner, we see build succeeded. Okay, void. I bet a lot of old school programmers will choke when they see me put void here and take all the arguments out there. We'll add them eventually. For now, I'm just going to run this. You can see we get a press any key to continue black console window. The hotkey I pressed to get that was Control F5. Alright, so now that that's done, most importantly, I need to do my save game. So I'm going to minimize my Visual Studio. Go here to Engine, and you see, well, actually notice this Engine folder was created for us. Okay, that's what happened when we created the project. The Visual Studio created this folder here. I'm going to go into this, and you see we have several files, README text, a bunch of stuff you can read if you want. Not very useful. I'm going to delete that, send it to the recycle bin. We have the user files, the filter files, the VCXProj files, the solution. We have the database here, which IntelliSense uses to make things code faster. The IPCH folder I don't even want to get into. And then debug. This is where everything builds to. When I hit Control-Shift-B, it builds all the temporary files here. There's a bunch of log files, but you also see, most importantly, here's the OBJ file. If you don't know what an OBJ file is, go look at my C++ playlist on my channel and learn the basics of some C++ and what OBJ files are, how they're related. Very important to understand, so please go watch that video. Alright, first of all, notice there's a bunch of junk in here. Well, it's not junk, but it's not useful to us. It's kind of in our way. So I'm actually going to bring Visual Studio back up here. I'm going to go to Build, and I'm going to say, hey, clean all those temporary files out. I don't want to see them. Let's start over. Don't keep them around. Maybe you built something and you're not using that again. I want to clean it out and have you rebuild it again. So I'm going to say clean, and if you notice, we go back to here. All those files, those temporary files, are gone. Okay, now it leaves some log files here that aren't useful as well. I'm going to delete these. Recycle bin, sure. Okay, now when we build our project, I want our executable here to end up in the debug folder. That's the setting we're set to, as debug. Yes, I want our exe to end up here, but I don't want all those temporary trash files there. So I'm going to actually right-click on my engine, go to Properties, and it's called the intermediate directory. Basically, where we're going to put all the intermediate files. Where's the temporaries go? You notice it's putting the temporaries in the $sign configuration folder. That's a macro. Let me show you what a macro is. I'm going to click down arrow, hit edit, and you see I can put macros here. And here's all the macros we can use. And Visual Studio will take that macro and replace it with whatever the value for that macro is. It's kind of like a dictionary. Here's the key and here's the value kind of thing. It's nice because if I want it to build on my machine, on your machine, then I'll use these macros accordingly. But I don't want the intermediate directory to go to the configuration folder, which is debug. Alright? I'm going to put it, I could put it anywhere I want to. I'm going to put it in configuration/temp, and then Visual Studio actually complains if you don't put a backslash here, you'll get a warning. So I'll put the or that's the C++ compiler that complains. I'll put the backslash there. Click OK. Let's build this again. Control-Shift-B, look down here. Build succeeded. Go back to the debug window here. And you see we have the PDB, that's for debugging purposes, the ILK. And then we have this TMP, or this temp folder. If I go in there, there's all the trash again. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't use the word trash, but they're really intermediate files. The most important one being the OBJ file, which is the compiled version of the CPP file, or the compilation unit. Again, if you don't understand OBJ files and CPPs, please go check the C++ playlist on my channel. Alright, so here's the engine exe. I can double click it. Notice the black console window comes and goes. It comes and goes. Notice our program. It's very basic. It doesn't do anything here. So of course the console window is going to come and go. The program is very simple, so the console window is going to come and go. And oh look, we're having a paint error there. That's kind of funny. Refresh. Okay. So now that I have my project file set up, I'm going to go here and I'm going to say svn add. Okay, this is my save game again. I want to add these files to my repository. However, notice that it's trying to check in a lot of these trashy files. So I think the way to actually do this simpler is let's go build, clean solution, bring that back up, and then do tortoise svn add. This is my version control. I don't want anything in the temporary folder. That's just temporary for my hard drive, and if I was in a team, I don't want to share that anyway. I don't want to pollute my repository with these temporary files either. The SDF, that's local IntelliSense information. Let's just keep it there. Same with the Open SDF. The solution files, the sudo, VC project filters, all that stuff, that's good. The user file, I technically shouldn't check in if I'm on a team. Those are specific settings to me. However, since I'm not doing this on a team, I'm going to check in my user files as well. The filters file is actually kind of interesting. That's what sets up. Remember, we had folders here. The .filters file keeps track of those virtual folders. If you don't check that in and you check it out, you check out your repository in another spot, you'll see that your folders disappear. That's because you didn't include the filters filters file. Okay, let me bring Tortoise back up. I definitely don't want IPCH. That's temporary stuff as well. So I want my CPP file, my Visual Studio project files. That's about it. Hit OK. Okay, I get this confirmation. You added all this stuff. Okay, good. And then here's my save game. I'm going to SVN commit this. And I always find it helpful to put messages in here. Later on, we'll see how to look at your SVN log. So always put a message in, what you're doing, what you changed, those sort of things. And you want to save game incrementally, micro check-ins, as I've heard it be called. The more you check in, the better. Think of yourself climbing up a wall, and you're putting things into the wall to hold yourself. Well, if you only do that every 100 feet and you fall, then you'll fall down 100 feet. But if you do it every 5 feet, then that's better, and you won't hurt yourself as much. Anyway, initial project files, check in all this stuff. Click OK. Off it goes. Here's the commit. Boom, we're done. All right, so there's the initial setup.